Welcome back to Host. I'm Karli. I will be reading your story tonight. As always, don't forget to comment down below if you think this is fact or fiction. Tonight's story is called Tombstone Tales. Graveyards are daunting places, and in this county, many of them are haunted places. The thought of walking alone at night through a cemetery and becoming disoriented within a forest of tombstones and tangled tree branches. Moonlight casts an eerie, silvery glow, and the calls of nighthawks piercing the silence has fired the fears of mortals since the beginning of recorded history. But what about those who tend those cities of the dead? In 1891, a reporter spoke spooks with John Harper, the superintendent of Charles Evans Cemetery, the largest, by the way, in this county. In the article headline, Among Graves at Midnight, the writer set the tone of the piece with an opening statement. It is quite safe to say there is no such thing as a spook. In the ensuing interview with Harper, who was the superintendent of Evans from 1880 to 1907, all notions of graveyard ghosts and ghouls were discounted. I have not heard or seen anything to indicate the presence of so-called ghosts or spooks, said the clear-headed Mr. Harper. I often read the accounts of those unearthly creatures in the newspapers, and I often wonder how people can be so superstitious as to believe in them. I have passed through the cemetery all hours of the night and never saw anything like spooks prowling around. Harper, who resided on the cemetery property, affirmed that his family felt quite secure there and never had gave ghosts a second thought. The superintendent even offered to escort readers to the graveyard any night to allay their fears. I would not advise a nervous person to try, he said, because the stillness of the place and the new sounds that they would encounter would naturally frighten such a person. Harper also waxed about the future. I hope, he said, the time will come when people will not be superstitious as to imagine that everything new they see or hear when they pass the cemetery will be called a spirit. Reading people are not superstitious as they are in some other places, but still some are afraid and hold in terror the thought of taking a trip through a cemetery in the dead of night. Charles C. Hart, who has been a superintendent of the Charles Evans Cemetery since 1991 and was serving in the capacity at the time of this writing, while he stopped short of the sharing his predecessor's zeal for debunking the things ghostly, he says that many years of the graveyards, where more than 68,000 souls are at eternal rest, nothing of the supernatural sort has ever taken place. Hart does admit, though, that when the sun goes down and night falls over the well-guarded graveyard, things out there are indeed a bit daunting. As far as haunting, well, that remains to be seen, so to speak. If nothing else, graveyards have often tended to attract the eccentric. Take an incident in 1900 when eyewitnesses at the church cemetery watched as a mystery man made a strange visit to the tombstones during a driving snowstorm. It was odd enough to warrant the article in the newspaper at the time. The man was about 70 years old and never once spoke to many people who passed by and tried to strike up a conversation. Some persons are opinionated that he was partially demented, the account said. He was first noticed some days ago when he entered the cemetery and began to read the inscriptions on the tombstones. He did this for several hours, then left, but never returned. No one knew who the man was, and some folks believed he was an inmate who had escaped from the institution. Others thought he may be a former resident of the area who returned to visit the grave of a loved one, where he spends the nights and obtains his meals. Who knows? That part ain't known. The old man carried a tablet with him, and he pauses in front of the tombstone and he writes down the inscription on the tombstone. This man comes back day and night, time after time. He did this, I guess, for years upon years. And just one day he vanished. But hey, like the curator said, there was no ghost among them tombstones. But are they? Y'all have a very blessed be night and day. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Have a good one.